Welcome, mortal. This is my first attempt at the Grimdark painting method. Join me as we feast through this guide of paint into Grimdark Crypt Horror.
Hello and welcome to part 3 of my 3-part series about the John Blanche paint sets. In this episode I will be putting his paint range to the test on this Crypt Horror from Games Workshop's Age of Sigmar. I have already painted 2 test bottles with a recipe I came up with myself, and I'm pretty proud of the result I got. Just take a look at this. I have tried to use as many of Blanche's paints as possible, but I'm also using some Citadel paints in this project. So, without further ado, let's paint ourselves a Grimdark miniature. I hope you'll grab your brush at home and follow along. Let's get started. As you saw in the intro, I have undercoated the model in Chaos Black. And the first color I'm going to use is Tainted Garden by from the John Blanche paint set. I've mixed a good amount on my palette and mixed it roughly 1-to-1 with water. And what I'm going to do is apply this all over the skin. And we are at least going to need 2 coats of this. And the trick is to not go back and paint over the wet paint, but just let it dry completely. Go over once and let it dry. And then add another layer, or 3 or 4, whatever, however many layers you need. So it doesn't matter if we hit much else, we can always paint over that with black later. But, as I said, apply this all over the skin. The paint is dry and I ended up giving him 2 coats. You might need more depending on how thin your paint is. But I'm satisfied with this result, and he looks nasty already, if I may say so. Next up I'm taking some ivory white, also from one of the John Blanche sets. And this time I'm applying it as a dry brush, a heavy dry brush indeed. I really want the miniature to, well, look like he's painted in ivory white except in the recesses. So what I'm going to do is just flick my brush all over the skin. Really heavy dry brush here. Just take your time with this and make sure you get all around the model. There is so much skin on this model. I'm quite pleased that his hair grows in all the appropriate places. Being naked and all. And now the miniature looks like this. I really went on with the heavy dry brushing. Next up, I've taken 3 drops of Guilliman Flesh and 1 drop of Contrast Medium, both from Citadel Color. And this I'm applying all over the skin. if you really want to make it look, well, more varied, you can use different dilutions at various places on the model, but I'm not going to do that. But as I said, all over the skin with this, and let it dry completely before we head on to the next stage. The paint is dry and he is looking more and more nasty by each step. Next we're going to do some wet blending, and this is all the places where he is sore, and there's plenty of them on this particular miniature. But actually it's easy to show what I mean by showing you another model, like this one. You can see what I've done here. I've used some volupus pink, which I've wet blended in all the places where he is sore. So that's where his spine is leaving his body, and all the bones going through his skin. And well, this one has plenty of them on his backside, his arms, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is grab my brush, add a little paint to it, and where should I start? How about right here? I'll add this where I think the skin will hurt the most, will be the most sore, and paint it all the way around. I'm using it straight from the bottle, as you can see. And then I'm going to quickly wash my brush, make sure it's damp, and then feather it or blend it into the skin so it doesn't have a hard stop line, but is more fading into the skin, if you know what I mean. So take your time with this. I promise you it will look really cool if you do this. Just some volupus pink straight from the bottle, and blend it into the skin with some water. And with that, the skin is looking pretty sore where the bones are protruding from his body. I don't think he mind though. Anyways, the next step is some skeleton horde. And I'm applying this pretty much like a layer. I'm using this all over the skin, and I'm avoiding the deepest recesses. So I can, for example, start on his leg here and just apply a single layer of skeleton horde straight from the pot. This will give him a pretty cool skin tone, if you ask me. Once again, take your time with this and, well, enjoy your hobby. The skeleton horde is dry, and well, just look at our boy. Isn't he handsome? There's only a couple of things I would like to do more to his skin, and the first one is to add some shading with Plaguebearer flesh, and I'm being very selective with this. I think I'll paint some into his armpits, just a tiny amount. To make it look really disgusting down there. Just a bit more. And also behind his knees. And finally between his rear end parts, you know, just like that. And I'll come back once the paint is dry. The plague bearer flesh is now completely dry. And the last thing I want to do to the skin is completely optional because its effect is very subtle. But that is to add some Carabao Crimson to his face, his hand and his feet, and wet blend it into the skin. That would look like he's been going through some bodies in the past few days or something. Looks like dried blood. But what I'm going to do is add some to his hand here, all over. It will look more subtle when it dries. Just all over the hand and fingers. And then, just like with the Volupus Pink, I'm gonna wash my brush, dry it off, make sure it's damp, and then make it fade into the skin. And as I said, I'm going to do this on his hands, his feet, and his face. Like so. And I'll just show on the face as well. I'm taking the entirety of the front of the face here. Just a little bit out on the sides, the top, the bottom. He's been munching. And then wash my brush, make sure it's damp, and just feather it into the surrounding skin so it fades very nicely. But as I said, this is completely optional. But whether you do this or not, the skin is complete. And with that, the skin is complete. Next, I'm going to paint the hair on this model, and there is only a little on his behind his legs and in his groin. And for that, I'm using the Darkness, which is a lovely deep green blue color. I've mixed it roughly 1-to-1 with water. And then just base coat it all in. Be careful not to hit the skin we just painted. Just like this. I really like this color. The base coat is dry, so now we can add a shade, and I'm using the coolest named shade ever, Grimdark Shadow. I mean, it must be Grimdark, it's in the name, right? So, and that's also from the John Blanche set. So using the same brush, I'm just applying this all over the hair to create some grimdark definition. And once applied, give it about 20 minutes to dry before heading on to the next step. The Grimdark Shadow has done its Grimdark thing and put some definition into the hair. Lastly, I'm going to add a little dry brush, and I'm using Banshee Brown for this, which is also from the John Blanche set. So I'll put a little on my brush here, my small dry brush, wipe most of it off on the tissue. I can test the strength on my finger here. Too strong, much better. And then just lightly flicker it across the hair, and be careful not to hit the skin. I do think this gives a nice color. It is brown hair with some dark blue shadows. The next step I would like to paint is all the claws, teeth and bones on this miniature, and there are plenty of them. I'm using some ivory white once more for a base coat. And I'm also using a fairly small size brush, but that's mainly because I want to be careful once I get close to the skin we painted earlier. But if you have any large bone areas, just like this club for instance, you can feel free to switch to a larger brush. Anyways, as I just said, apply this all over any bone and teeth and claws as a base coat. And because this is a bright color over a black undercoat, you might need to apply 2 coats of this. So just let the first one dry completely and then add the second one afterwards. Or a third if you need to. Also on this particular miniature there is a skull on the base, I need to remember that. The base coat is dry, and as I mentioned in the previous clip, I've added 2 layers to make it cover somewhat completely. But now it's so bright that it almost hurt my eyes, so we're going to need something to tone it down, or should I say, make it more grimdark. So what are we going to use, you ask? Well, of course, Grimdark Shadow once more. So I'm grabbing my brush, adding some Grimdark Shadow to it, and applying it all over the bone and teeth and claws. And once done, let it dry for about 20 to 30 minutes. I have given the Grimdark Shadow plenty of time to dry, so now we have a much more darkened version of all those bones and some much needed definition. But I'm going to finish them off with a dry brush, and I'm using Sunburst Ochre. So, put a little on my brush here, it's undiluted by the way, and wipe most of it off on my tissue here. Yeah, like so I think, yeah. And then just apply it as a dry brush all over the bones and teeth and claws. This will give the bones a unique, disgusting look, in my opinion. Like so. I hope you like it. If you want a more traditional bony look, you can always use some Screaming Skull from Citadel instead. But I really like this color. So that's what I'm going with. And with that, the claws, teeth and bones are all complete. I really like this nasty look. Next up I'm going to paint those straps on his big club here. And I'm starting with the base coat of Baneblade Brown from Citadel. I've mixed it on my palette roughly 1:1 with water. Just be careful not to hit the surrounding areas and paint it all in. Just like that. The base coat is dry, so now you can probably guess what happens next. If you guessed we need some definition and shading, then you, sir or ma'am, is very correct. And you know which one I'm going to use? I'm sure you do. It's the Grimdark Shadow once again. But this time I've mixed it in a 1-to-1 ratio with some Lamian medium, because I think it's quite strong on its own, so I needed to thin it down a little bit. But here we go. Carried away by a grimdark shadow. I'm so sorry. I just got Mike Oldfield on my mind while painting this miniature. I don't know why. Anyways, the Grimdark Shadow is dry, so now I would like to add a highlight. And for that I'm using Carrick Stone. I think I used 1 drop of Carrick Stone to 2 drops of water. So it's quite thin. And all I want to do is just the most raised areas, apply a little bit of Carrick Stone. And when applying a highlight, if you can, please use the side of your brush instead. You have much better control that way. Like so. And with that highlight applied, the leather wrappings are complete. Now there isn't really that much left to paint on this model, but one thing is quite literally sticking out to me, and that's the corpse on his back. And for that I'm starting with a base coat of Rakarth flesh, just all over the corpse. You might need to apply a couple of layers of this for it to cover completely. But apply it, let it dry, and apply it again, and again, and again, as many times as you need to. Oh, this poor guy. What did he do to deserve this fate? Anyways, it's cool. And we're back. It took me several thin coats to make it cover the way I wanted it to, but as always, it's better to use several thin coats rather than one thick one, which might spoil details. What I have in front of me now is 2 different shades from Citadel. It's Atonian Camo Shade and Raglan Flesh Shade. I'm going to use them both at once, actually, so what I'm going to do first is take some Athonian Camo Shade and apply it all over this poor fellow. Just all over. I'm trying to achieve a pretty cool effect here. Almost there. Right, that's about it. And while the Athonian Camo Shade is still wet, I'm going to wash my brush, grab some Raglan Flesh Shade, and blend it with the Athonian Camo Shade straight on the model. Just like this. Add some Raglan Flesh Shade here and there. I'm washing my brush again, and then just move it around on the model. Just like this. It will naturally give an variation in color tone, skin tone. It will look disgusting, but that's the purpose. I did manage to get some flesh paint onto the horn here, but it's okay because we're going to drip this in blood later. Just move it around until you have something you're satisfied with, and then let it dry completely. The shade is dry, and now the corpse has this moldy look. I really like it. Next, I'm going back to some Rakarth flesh and applying it as a layer. Only on the most raised and flat surfaces, such as his chest, for instance. Yes, I've thinned it down with water once again. His muscles. I'm just avoiding the recesses where the shade has settled. Just like this. With that layering complete, I'm next going to grab some flayed one flesh, thinned 1:1 with water, and apply a highlight to the poor bastard. This is just the most extreme edges. And again, whenever you can, use the side of your brush for much better control. Like so. Now he sure is a handsome boy. I presume he's a boy, I'm not sure. But, well, he sure is because I can see his chest. Anyways, next I'm going to grab some Agrak's Earthshade and shade the inside of his eyes and his mouth. Just like that. And then leave it for a few minutes, or maybe 5 or 10, to dry completely. And following that, I'm grabbing a little bit of thinned down Screaming Skull to highlight his teeth and his eyes, or rather eye. There's only one to paint here, so yeah. Like so, and the teeth. And with the corpse being all, well, corpse-like, I'm moving on to his wonderful necklace. I'm using 3 colors for this, and the first is a base coat of Runelord Brass. I'm using a rather small brush for this, but that's only because I want to be careful around the bones we painted earlier. I don't want to get any of this on the bones. So just cover this entire thing in Runelord Brass. With that base coat applied and completely dry, I'm then adding some Agrax Earthshade to it, and I'm actually using the same small brush for the same reasons as before. Just gently apply this all over. The shade is dry, and that shouldn't take very long with that small amount of Agrax shade. The last thing I want to do is add a little tiny amount of dry brushing, and I'm using Golden Griffin for this, just to give it a bit of a shine. So grab your dry brush, add a little of this to your brush, and remove most of it from your tissue, on your tissue, like so. And then, just very gently on each side, give it a bit of a shine. Not too much, not too little. And with that, the necklace is complete. The very last thing I want to paint is his eyes, and I'm using another John Blanche paint, Moonbeam Yellow. I'm using the smallest brush that I have, and then I'm just going to dot in his eyes. Just find the angle that's most comfortable for you and try to have steady hands. With the eyes painted, I would now call this model finished. But I'm not done yet. I would like to add some blood effects. And I'm using two different kind of paints for this. The first one is gore, made by Dirty Down. And for this we're going to need a toothpick. This is to create some bloody strings on the miniature. And I'm looking at that corpse right now, thinking he needs some blood effects, that's for sure. Maybe like so. Oof. Disgusting, eh? You can add as little or as much of this as you want around the model. I think I'm going for his weapon and maybe his fingers, and yeah. When you're satisfied, we can move on to the next step. Poor guy. I don't know about you, but I find this effect really cool. Next up, I'm going to make it even bloodier with some blood for the Blood Guard by Citadel. And there are different ways you can use this. You can, for example, make blood droplets on those strings we just applied, to make it look a bit more, well, bloody and nasty. And then, of course, we're going to add some blood around where he would be bloody. You can apply this directly, as I'm doing now. You can also kind of stipple it on. Maybe it looks like blood has dripped down onto this bone right here, like so. And a little bit around his ripped off torso. I like adding blood. Call me crazy, but this is one of my favorite parts of painting this miniature. So maybe he's bleeding a little from his mouth. And his missing eye. Just like so. Once again, do as little or as much of this as you want around the model, but try to make it bloody around those strings to make it look more natural. Just like this. So gory. And now the model is complete. Well, of course, there's still the base to do, and I want to talk about that briefly. You should do it however you'd like, so it matches your army, and there's also this rock here standing on. Painting however you usually paint rocks. I recommend a somewhat dark color for this miniature. But what I'm going to use is add a few tufts. I'm using the Marsland set by Gamer's Grass. And then I got my hands on some common dark earth from Crowdcover Scenics and some A Tale of Grimdark. I've mixed these about 50-50 into this box here, and that's what I'm going to use after I apply the tufts. And with that, the model is complete. With the basing done, the model is entirely complete, and that also concludes my 3-part series about the John Blanche sets. I hope you enjoyed it. I really think those sets have a place in my collection. There are some cool colors amongst them, so I would heartily recommend them. Also, I think it would be cool if you could paint an entire Flesh Eater Courts army in this color scheme. But for me personally, I only use this on my Crypt Horrors to make them look different from the rest of my Flesh Eater Courts army. Yes, I'm a Flesh Eater Courts collector. Never played the game though. And with that said, all I need to do is just some housekeeping. If you like this, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. My channel is not big, but it is growing. I'm very thankful for that. And if you have any comments, leave them for me. I'll answer anyone. And with that, thank you for watching and happy painting.